Yeah, film. Yeah, films. We watched some films. Now let's talk about those films.
Excellent. So The Last of Us, which season 1 came out in 2023, is about after a global pandemic destroys civilization, a hardened survivor takes charge of a 14-year-old girl who may be humanity's last hope. It's created by Neil Druckmann, who did the game, and Craig Mazin, who does media like TV. So
yeah, he did Chernobyl.
Yes, which is like that, very informed on horrific things happening to human bodies and like
Yes.
the collapse of society because of little things that
Mhm.
the checks and balances not being in place and controlled properly. So,
Yep.
he's
As
well
humans will
versed.
do.
Yes. So, The Last of Us is a gripping adaptation of the acclaimed video game series developed by Naughty Dog. It is an emotionally charged drama set in a post-apocalyptic world ravaged by a fungal outbreak that masterfully intertwines elements of horror and heartfelt storytelling. It follows the journey of Joel, a hardened survivor, and Ellie, a young girl who may hold the key to humanity's survival. And as they traverse dangerous landscapes and encounter various threats, they form a complex bond that is tested by the harsh realities of their environments and the moral dilemmas that they face. It's very similar to Fallout in that way, like when we're met with apocalyptic media and you're like, look at how hardened the world has made us. That becomes an easy excuse of like,
Yeah.
immoral and harmful behavior. And especially when you're stuck in the trauma, like you're never out of it. So
Yeah.
it's a constant that. So it's always fight or flight. It's always fight or flight. People end up becoming this very base instinct version of themselves, which is an entirely different villain than what you're experiencing with the actual monsters, which is why I think with the show, the emphasis is so much more on the person-to-person relationships in the society, and the monsters are really just background noise, which some people hated and I loved. I was like, that's exactly it, bud.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the game is that you're like, wow, ouch, people. And they were way more heavy-handed with that in the second game, which is why I'm actually very interested to see what I think it'll lend well to a show adaptation. In a way that like the first one definitely did too, but it was definitely a little more focused on the, oh geez, scary monster and like definitely people, but the show like really spotlighted that in a way that I think was true to what the second game was doing.
Yeah, and I'm very interested to see how the character of Joel is handled in season 2 when it's played by Pedro Pascal, which we've all now developed like a certain. I think it'll be very effective. Like I think it'll serve its purpose of what Druckmann was trying to do because we already have that connection to Pascal. So it's going to be like, oh shoot,
yeah,
right? People
it's gonna hit
heavy. Yeah,
hard.
So I think that's gonna be great. But with the show, we begin the series getting to know Joel and his daughter Sarah, and it's a lot of scenes are almost like point for point from the game. Like you could see like you watch them at the same time, it's the same scene. But what we saw in the first episode and what is continued throughout this whole series is those brief cinematic moments we get in the game are now like we kind of zoom out and we get a before to lead in, we get to get connected to these characters, we get it after, we get to fill out the whole picture because we're not just running from our lives from clickers. So we begin the series getting to know Joel and his daughter Sarah, and throughout the beginning viewers can catch glimpses into the impending doom in this incredibly regular day, right? There's just a dusting of something evil this way coming, and after the end of the world, which is brought about by a pandemic of disgusting and traumatizing proportions and the loss of Sarah in most of the world's population, we are jumped into the future of 2023. And in this future, major cities like Boston have transformed into oppressive quarantine zones ruled by ruthless military regimes. Amidst this bleak landscape, Joel is now a hardened smuggler, and his aim, along with his partner Tess, is to secure the resources needed for a journey westward to get his brother, which is like similar background, right? This time we get more about Tess. We get more about Tess now, and like their relationship, like everything happens so fast in the game, even though it is such a robust story, that this is like, okay, now we can actually sit with these people. However, Joel and Chess's plans are upturns, and they make an unexpected turn when they encounter the Fireflies, which are a rebel faction led by Marlene, and they have held captive Ellie, who is this young girl whose significance to humanity's survival becomes increasingly apparent. And so Joel agrees to transport Ellie westward, setting in motion a perilous journey fraught with danger and moral ambiguity. And Ellie definitely mirrors Sarah in a lot of ways. And it is like this relationship and this, like Joel kind of finding his original self that he had to kind of pocket away to survive in this wasteland. So in a post-apocalyptic landscape filled with shattered souls struggling to endure, vengeance drives many who are now haunted by past injustices inflicted upon themselves and their loved ones. And amidst this familiar tale of survival in a shattered world, The Last of Us delves deeper, challenging the essence of humanity and the bonds tethering us to societal norms and responsibilities. It presents us a chilling premise that transcends traditional zombie narratives and offers a starkly plausible vision of horror, specifically in this type of apocalypse, because it's not gonna happen, but it could.
It could, absolutely. Like it's unlikely.
Yes.
To happen in our lifetime. But maybe.
As we were saying last week or 2 weeks ago, when we were talking about Fallout, like things happen, like mutations, all kinds of things occur naturally when we're put in, like when we expedite that process, and we are in a climate crisis. So who knows?
And I'll talk about that in my section.
Exactly. So who knows what's going to happen? So I want to talk about the cordyceps nightmares that haunt me, because that, I think, like, I'm going to talk about the show too, and just like the emotional parts of it, because it's so important. But I just want to give you all a reason why you should be afraid of these monsters. So the infection in the show and games mirrors that of a typical zombie outbreak, right? Where we're transforming individuals into this instinct-driven creature that's compelled to propagate the contagion, right? It's just trying to feed and replicate. That's what zombies try to do, right? They are no longer individuals, and there's so many narratives around that, right? But however, unlike the speculative nature of many fictional infections, this deadly pathogen is grounded in reality. So it's derived from a genuine fungus that we discussed in our video games episode. But in case you missed that, here's why you should respect nature and fear mushrooms. Okay. So the cordyceps brain infection depicted in the show is directly inspired by the real cordyceps fungus. So directors Bruce Straley and Neil Druckmann drew their inspiration from a BBC Planet Earth clip, reminiscent of Kat's adamant assertion that any underwater coverage in the series is tantamount to a horror movie. Any Planet Earth clip is actually horror, and so is the specific one. In this clip, it showcases the unsettling infection of an ant by the cordyceps fungus, right? This is a biological phenomenon that lingers in the memory long after learning about it in school. I remember specifically...
You learned about it in school?
I did. I remember watching this documentary and learning about it.
If I did, I was asleep, or I don't know. That's crazy. I don't think I learned about it in school.
Forever, right? I was like, I don't think I want to get into biology. I don't want to do it. So in this clip, we hear Sir David Attenborough as he explains the progression and horror of this parasitic infection. So first, the infection occurs.
These bullet ants are showing some worrying symptoms. Spores from a parasitic fungus called cordyceps have infiltrated their bodies and their minds.
Right. And so in the article, the zombie fungus in The Last of Us is actually real. They say a foraging carpenter ant walks through an area of the tropical rainforest floor infested with microscopic spores dropped by a mature fungus. The spore excretes an enzyme that eats through the ant's exterior shell. Once infected, fungal cells in the ant's head release chemicals that hijack the insect's central nervous system. So it now controls them. And the ant will latch onto a tree stem in what is called a death grip. Like, that's all it's being told to do this, to hold on for dear life. And after 2 days, the ant leaves its tree colony and climbs down to a spot where humidity and temperature are optimal for fungus growth. And the ant crawls onto a stem or the underside of a leaf, bites into the main middle vein so it won't fall, and then it dies. And it's there so it could just go out there, spread this fungus, right? So imagine you're just like sitting there, and then all of a sudden your brain hijacked, and now you're going to stand on a tree and just spread. No. So here you can see the body of the cordyceps fungus growing out of its head, and the clip shows the haunting progression of the fungus stem extruding from the head and growing and reaching out. And this is the fungal growth stage where the fungus eats the ant's internal organs, using its shell as a protective casing while it has its little lunch. And then the fungus's main stem, which is called the stroma, technical term for you, erupts from the back of the ant's head and grows. And at the peak of the infection, about 40 to 50% of the ant's body is made up of fungus on the inside. So you talk about being a zombie. This is what's happening to the people in this video game and show. So after about 3 weeks, it will begin releasing spores from the tip that seek to infect other ants and turn them into fungus heads. And the mature fungus releases spores from its stroma, and the spores fall to the ground, creating a 10 square feet killing zone, which will attack new ants. And Sir Attenborough lets us know that the infection is strong and can wipe out entire colonies of ants. This is why if an ant is discovered with the infection, they will be cast out. Even more excitingly, there are thousands of different types of cordyceps fungi, and each focus on one species. So they're like specifically crafted to hijack the brain of a specific creature and then eat all its organs and then try to get it. I do wonder how other ants peep that.
Yeah.
Like, I think Dave's acting really sus. Like,
I think it was a smell thing, if I remember.
I think so too. But I just imagine that, like, he keeps asking me to go out onto a branch and just inhale the air near him. I don't know what's going on.
It seems sus. We should maybe kill Dave before he can kill us.
Get rid of Dave. I do think it's a sin thing. And ants are pretty smart and strong and cool. I'm glad they're trying.
That's why I don't like to kill them. I feel very sad. So at our old house, we had a symbiotic relationship with the ants.
Oh. Yeah. In an interview with Game Informer, the inspirations for The Last of Us, creators Straley and Druckmann were inspired not by the gruesome video, but rather by Sir David Attenborough explaining that the more numerous the species, the more likely it was to become infected. So, like, this in Parasite is like, there's a lot of those things. So the likelihood of us spreading is greater. So let's go there. So then this duo asked themselves, what if this thing jumped to humans? Yeah, what if? Now we have this horrifying show. So the terrifying thing about the cordyceps fungi is how it evolves to best suit each of its specific intended targets, right? So the different types and the results of the infection can be oddly beautiful. Like, I'll try to find some pictures, but definitely look them up. Like, there's the ones with like spiders, the ones with the ants. Like, it does, like, it's
art.
It is art. It's just, it's like bio art, and it is like, you know, very vibrant colors and like fauna. Like, it is, it's really cool because it's like, there is new life blooming from the carcasses of these dead things, and they're becoming something new, which is like very interesting. And it's the way that the world works, but it's also terrifying and haunts my nightmares. So, so as beautiful as some of them are terrifying. There's one type that's specific for tarantulas, and if you're listening, please go look it up. It's called the cordyceps ignota.
Cool.
This one sprouts several buds from its victim and doesn't aim to spread, but simply kills its prey. Just for goodness.
But how does it keep go?
It just, I don't know. It's just out there. It's a killer. I don't know. I have to ask them.
Got good on it, you know.
Fortunately, there is reassuring news. The likelihood of a cordyceps fungus infection affecting humanity is low. Currently, no known species of cordyceps target humans or any mammals for that matter. While it's theoretically possible for such an evolution to occur, it would likely take thousands of years. And given our collective experience navigating respiratory pandemics over the recent years, there's little doubt that humanity possesses the capability to contain and mitigate the spread of such an infection.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
If it were to arise, like in the beginning, you see how like quickly it's like one person is sick and it's from rice and
it's everywhere.
And then it's everywhere and it's too late.
Yeah, you don't even got to put it in rice now. They put it in the mushroom coffee. The mushroom coffee I have has cordyceps in it.
That's terrifying, Kat. Don't do that. I'm gonna have to cast you out.
No, I mean it's not. I don't think it's live. I imagine, but it is in there, and I remember reading it.
It's in your body. You're welcome.
I don't like that, but yeah, I still drink it. It gives me energy. It has lion's mane in there. You know, mushrooms can be good. When they don't form this thing.
It's just like so the way that ants are like, something's wrong with Dave, right? Something's wrong with Aunt Dan. They cast them out. People aren't like that. Like, we just saw that happen. People were like, well, some people will die, but we're just going to keep on trucking. That's not how any of this works. So there is speculation about the potential impact of medicinal drugs containing cordyceps on the evolutionary timeline. Possibly accelerating any such process, like putting it in coffee. But I think like taking live shrooms and putting them into different medications, and I think just like tampering with the natural versions of them could lead to an unnatural progression towards humans. Because maybe they just didn't even know about us, you know, and then all of a sudden they're like, wait a second.
Ooh, but what if?
I bet their organs are yummy.
You know, I bet they do say that.
I'd like to think that human organs are just as tasty as an ant's organ.
To a cordyceps fungus specifically.
Yeah. I don't eat any organs.
Sure. I mean, you are cosplaying as
that's true.
Fungus. So
as something
that was very in character for you to say.
Thank you. Look at me. I'm a character actor. Hire me. So let's talk about heartbreaking narratives at the end of the world. So the show adaptation, though brilliantly featuring the horrors of the cordyceps-infested hellscape of our potential future, it focuses on the complexities of the human condition, right? There is a thread of perseverance and community in each episode, and we see it in the slow development of Joel and Ellie's relationship as well. Both of these people who've known so much harm and hurt intimately are still hardwired to give and receive care. Right? And the show is a mix of the overarching narrative, watching Joel and Ellie's relationship build as they confront the gritty, unkind world while trying to maintain a semblance of hope. And sprinkled throughout, we're offered more in-depth looks into relationship stories and characters that could easily stand alone. Like, they almost feel like short stories in between the main story, right? So these stories expand upon the world Druckmann weave together already, fleshing out the depth of the dark future. And these stories are found in the games, offered through subtle details, right? Like a found body, a left note, a broken piece of dialogue. Right. Yeah. And the show allowed Druckmann to be overt with his message, to tell the story we'd have to piece together in the game, now full and complete. The reception to the third episode of the show has been polarizing, right? This is one of the biggest examples of taking something that we could have experienced in the game if you're paying attention and expanding upon it, but people don't always pay attention. So they're like, where's the scary monsters? And I was like, society is scary, buddy. Yeah. Read a book. So So it was polarizing because some gamers accuse the creators of pushing an agenda or fabricating storylines. However, many viewers appreciated the depth and emotional resonance of this episode because it offered a poignant exploration of Bill and Frank's backstory, shedding light on their characters in a way that resonated with these audiences. Moreover, it provided a refreshing departure from the often bleak and nihilistic endings typical of apocalyptic media, offering a truly beautiful alternative conclusion that left a lasting impact. It also is like, it's not the bury your gaze trope because they won the apocalypse.
Yeah.
They lived a full, beautiful life full of love and hardship, but so far removed from the real horrors that everyone else was like being stripped of their humanity. They held on to each other and they got to go out on their own fucking terms. They won.
Yeah. And it was like, it was in the game. Like, it was a slightly different. It was a more depressing version, but it was still in the game. They weren't like, let's just make that guy gay now. Like, no, that was already what happened in the game. You just have to find the journal in the room. And like, if you didn't do that, you wouldn't have known it was in there. Yeah. And it was also just like, as you said, like, they made it a little disaster utopia, you know, instead of it just being like another thing that hurts so viscerally. And like, every time I watch it, I cry. It's a great one.
Yeah. And it's honestly a gift. And exactly like you were saying, like, there are these subtle things. There's like, there's dialogue. There's like just intuiting the relationship of these men, but it's like, you get a glimpse of them and then you have to keep going. And I think that's something to be appreciated in the show, is that we get to spend more time with these people and he gets to tell these stories that he was trying to put in there in the first place. So there's no alternative, like, he's not driving an agenda. He's just telling a story that's pretty real.
The story is canon, you know, it's not.
It's canon. Yes. In a later episode, we are introduced to Kathleen, who emerges as a formidable leader within the resistance, and her demeanor hardened by the relentless trials of a fractured America. It's wonderfully performed as well. So Kathleen, shaped by profound pain and repeated betrayals, she adopts a ruthless approach to survival, navigating the harsh realities of this dystopian world with fierce determination. She is a very strong leader, but she doesn't look like what we usually say strong leaders are supposed to look like. So, played by Melanie Linsky, Kathleen gives her this calm, soft approach to a vicious leader, effectively displaying the ways that trauma and oppression can warp a well-intentioned, kind human into a machine for perceived justice. Like, she thinks she's doing the right thing, and she thinks this is the only way to do it. And it is, again, that cyclical nature. And I remember Melanie Linsky getting a lot of hate because people were like, she's not scary. She just looks like a mom, like, or she just looks like a regular woman.
Definitely scary.
She was terrifying, right?
Yeah.
And the reason is, it's like, she's a person. Like, and we've said this a number of times, right? Like, the villains and the monsters and the people who do harm aren't gonna look like obvious monsters, right?
Yeah.
Like, they don't become gruesome and obvious. Like, that defeats the purpose of, like, the extent of their harm, right? Like, they have to go undercover, right? They're going to look like regular people. And when we discredit regular people's harm by saying they don't look like a monster, then it really, like, it impedes our ability to know and identify real monsters.
Yeah. 100%.
Because they're going to look like Melanie Linsky. She's also, love everything she's in. Can't get enough of her. Maybe one day we'll do Yellow Jackets.
Oh, true.
So, and that would be fun because, so Melanie Linsky is in this, and then in Fallout, blanking on her name, but she's in Yellow Jackets. So that'd be fun. Anyway, I think Kathleen is terrifying, and she's even more terrifying because she's so regular, and it just feels more believable. Like, I got it. I understood why she was the way she was.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
it's like, it's direct action gets the goods, but you take it a little too far. You know,
yeah,
like she she was a revolutionary. She freed that town of the oppressive forces, but then because of the death of her brother, became an oppressive force, like, and did the vengeance route. And that's like, it's very Naruto pain arc where you get why, and you're like, oh, but did you have to destroy the city?
Yeah.
You know?
And it's also like, I mean, that happens often when you have like an oppressive regime and then the people have a revolution and, you know, usurp that leader, that there becomes this vacuum, and it's very easy that they get preyed upon by someone who then becomes the new oppressive regime. And so, like, you know, certainly better things could have happened here, right? But this is honestly taken a page out of the book of reality in life. So, excellent. In this episode, we're also introduced to Henry and Sam, who are a pair of brothers trying to survive being hunted by Kathleen and her troops. And the episode ends in one of the many emotional, heartbreaking moments of the series that will haunt you far longer than any clicker ever could. It also features a deaf actor who is using real sign language. And he's an amazing actor. And I'm really glad that, like, you know, he's getting his flowers. And it's these moments that highlight the complex new world that, now devoid of our creature comforts and societal protections, leaves us alone and in constant fight or flight, right? And the show is a love letter to the games, right? Featuring visuals from the game, and even the score is produced by the same person. The show embodied the essence of the games, the themes and intention, and not getting caught up in the necessary violence, tension, and monsters needed for an effective game. Right? In fact, we don't see much of the game's titular villains, the clickers or the bloaters or the other infected, right? We're only revealing themselves in key moments that intentionally drive the narrative forward. In a game, like, you need there to be monsters, so you're running around and you're shooting them and you're hiding from them. In the show, they would be silly to have them all the time. Also, I'm sure they took so many hours to put somebody in a thing. I don't mind. I can sit. I'm very patient. You can put me in the hostage. But I'm sure it took a very long time, and then they got to do their little glitchy thing. And when they were there, because it was like not constant, like, you still had those jump scare moments. You still had that, like, fear, that, like, impending doom when you could sense that they were nearby, or like, this is a scenario where we're going to encounter them. And when they were there and it's just like one of them, like, that is so, like, the fact that people are terrified of just one of these creatures is so much scarier as, like, an empathetic human than if it was a bunch of zombies running up a wall, World War Z style.
Yeah, right? World War Z I didn't like because of that, because it was silly. It, like, wasn't scary. I was like, what are you doing? But that's an unintentional dig at World War Z. But
it's not a great adaptation. I mean, the book was a lot cooler because it was more sciencey, and I thought that was fun. And I don't even like science. So that's just a fact. So I think it was such a great idea that they presented themselves in key narrative moments when they were, infecting specific characters and very intimate. I'm sure there's a lot of
that was a choice. That was a choice. It is what it is.
Coming out of that one, or just traumatizing moments, right? But the fact that there's just few and far between, I think, is super effective, because at the end of the world, in whatever apocalypse that finds us, which there are so many options, it is not the monsters that will haunt us, but ourselves. The people we will need to build onto ourselves like a plate of armor, right?
Yeah.
Our savior won't be a monster slayer, but the perseverance of care and community, of disaster utopias, and a resilience anchored by our human need to love and be loved, which is what we get in the relationship of Joel and Ellie, and why it's such an effective story in both game form and show form.
Yeah. And what was really great about the show is that it did have such a good story, and that was already in the game, but, like, because the game is so scary, it's inaccessible to a lot of people. And it's a hard game. Like, it's not simple gameplay. Like, even on easy mode, the amount of times that, and I might get comments on that. You can't game or whatever, but like it's a hard game. It's a hard game, especially if you're a chicken. And like it is terrifying, and the mechanics are kind of difficult. So like it's not necessarily accessible to as wide an audience as it deserves to be, because of that. So the show kind of makes it more accessible to like people who can really appreciate it, who maybe wouldn't have wanted to take the time to scare the crap out of themselves playing the game. And because like the volume of the monsters is great. Like every path that you go down, there's at least like 5 things you gotta fight through to get to the next part. And it can become really draining if like if you just want the story, you know? So this is what you get, is if you just want the story, this is the story, and it's really powerful. So
yeah. And you know what, if anyone's gonna hate on you for not playing the game, or for acknowledging the difficulty of the game, like they're gonna hate on you no matter what. And they're already hating the show. Like it's not like, people need to understand that gaming is an experience for everyone. And there's a lot of complex things that go into it. Even just like outside of the accessibility of like whether or not it's easy or not, there's also the accessibility options of just like, can people who are differently able to play.
Yeah. And I will say this game won awards.
It won awards for being different abled accessible. So I was gonna say that. It's like,
sorry.
Awards. Yeah, no. But that's just like something to be said, right? Is like there's so many levels to games that people aren't always taking in consideration because we live in our own little bubbles.
No, it's super real. And like the show, makes it available to more people so that the great story can be told.